connected. Paul.
Hi, Casey. I'm on and unmuted and everything.
All right, so we'll give one more minute as people join in, and Trish will take over here. I guess it's 10 o'clock, so I'll let you start, Trish.
Okay. Hi, guys. Welcome to Coffee and Careers. My name is Trish, and Coffee and Careers is an inspired learning platform conceptualized by Dr. Casey Bradley. The goal is to let students and animal science professionals network, talk about their experiences, and share insight that give a good and realistic perspective of how to step up and break into the businesses of livestock feed and animal nutrition. So our guest speaker for today is Dr. Paul Davis. So Paul is the Director of Quality, Food Safety, and Education at the American Feed Industry Association. He grew up in a diversified livestock operation in Tennessee and studied agriculture at Tennessee Technological University. Paul developed a passion for the beef industry early on, and he's been heavily involved in many 4-H and FFA projects since his younger years. Paul went on to pursue and earn his master's and then his PhD at the University of Florida, where his academic, social, and community achievements were recognized. Paul received the Graduate Student of the Year award and was inducted to the University of Florida Hall of Fame by the UF Animal Science Department in 2003. So since then, Paul's enjoyed a 12-year career as a beef nutritionist with Tennessee Farmers Cooperative. He's held multiple positions within that organization, and he's also been part of the board of directors for Cooperative Research Farms, Tennessee Feed and Grain Association, Tennessee Tech Ag Foundation, and American Feed Industry Association. So to share with us about what it's like to go from feed mill to Capitol Hill, please welcome Dr. Paul Davis.
Sure. Thank you, Trish, and thank you, Casey, for the invitation. Just really quick, Casey and I go back a ways through our work at Cooperative Research Farms in various roles. So really appreciate you all having me today. If I can figure out how, I will share my screen and we can get started. Let's see, this is not it.
So far, so good on my end.
All right, I think so. Everybody still see and hear and everything?
Yep.
Good, good, good. So yes, that was a fantastic introduction, Trish, and I will share with you all, I guess, my personal journey from feeding animals to making feed and now advocating on the legislative and regulatory side, and sometimes on Capitol Hill. Go to the Senate building, I guess somewhat frequently, at least pre-COVID we did. And you know, sometimes I do take pause and think about what a journey it's been from a 4-H kid and out playing in the dirt and chasing after various animals and now in Washington, D.C. doing the things that we do there. So AFIA is my current employer and where we do those legislative and regulatory works. So let's talk a bit about AFIA, and we can talk about you know, my personal journey and some of the different things I've done through the years, and maybe how it all fits together after a while, and have some discussion and questions. It's a wide open forum. I believe that's the way Dr. Bradley would like to have it. So however, Casey, you all manage questions, we can certainly, you know, field as many of those as we need to. So AFIA, or American Feed Industry Association, was founded in 1909, and that was when the regulatory environment was beginning to take shape, and each state seemed to want to regulate feed in its own way. So the need for a national association was born, and then here came AFIA. So I guess that's 112 years now. We are a membership-based organization, have about 700 members, and we represent 75% of all the feed, and then we say 70% of all non-grain ingredients. As some of you all may know, if you brought in, whole grain corn and wheat and all that production, the number is so huge we wouldn't have a very big share. But if you say non-grain ingredients, we do have a very appreciable share. Talking about a membership organization, we give 4 promises to our members, and those would be the promises of voice, representation, expertise, and engagement. So we have events and networking things for engagement. We function as your voice and representation on Capitol Hill and with state legislatures as well. And then we do offer some subject matter expertise in different areas for our members to engage with as well. Have a relatively diverse membership, but as you can see, predominantly feed ingredient suppliers and feed and pet food manufacturers. And then you can begin to see the smattering of other things. Industry support, we say, other associations, some universities, equipment manufacturers, and then pharma, those that just manufacture medicated feedstuffs or ingredients. So one thing I want to share is how big the universe of nutrition and feed really is. Maybe as we grew up, we had something in our mind's eye about feed and feed making and the folks that made feed, but it is really big, it's really diverse, and many facets. And just to begin to point them out, here are 7 or 8 different categories of membership and all these have interest in feed in some form or fashion. So you can begin to see, there are people, there are positions and people in all those sectors. So you can see that the universe is bigger than just feed manufacturers. There's, these feed into it, but there's also, support beyond that. So at AFIA, the closer to Capitol Hill type work, what do? We help members understand current and state and federal regulations. I was a member when I worked at Tennessee Farmers Cooperative. I actually sat on the board of AFIA, and the value I found was if something was changing or troublesome on that regulatory landscape or new legislation coming down the pike, the ability to pick up the phone, talk with, it was Richard Sellers back in the day, to talk with Richard Sellers and his colleagues and get those immediate answers or a letter written or whatever in support of our industry. And that's still a large part of what AFIA does, but not everything. We do work with our members and then directly with policymakers. We offer the Safe Feed, Safe Food certification program, manufacturing standards. And that brings up another thing to mention, auditing of feed facilities and food facilities. Those are careers for a lot of folks as well. And then there's training that spurs off from that. So if your personality is one of, analytics and audits and standards, there are those types of things that can be accomplished as well. There's a massive industry just in the auditing world. In our facilities, this slide now is a couple of months old. We're leaning on 900 facilities in our programs. So that's growing. The interest is growing. The interest in food safety is growing globally, I would say. And then I mentioned the education and networking things that we do, and then a whole lot of communications and news. We do have a public charity, and here again, we're talking careers. This public charity has to be staffed. There has to be an executive director for this public charity, this foundation, and lots of others that serve agriculture and feed. So this one, ours is called iFeeder, the Institute for Feed Education and Research. And obviously we do things of interest to the feed and somewhat to the livestock producing industries. And you can see, I'm not going to beat you over the head with all these numbers, but you can see some of the statistics and data there that AFIA does. And you know, when I came from a rural place in Tennessee, my grandfather, born in 1918, he didn't even believe, he lived his whole life and didn't even believe that there was such a thing as a million. So when you begin to look at the millions of tons that we deal with in the industry and the millions of dollars that we deal with, it becomes really impressive really fast. So animal food, we talk about livestock feed and pet food as animal food. I know that probably sounds a bit foreign to some of you, and you know, I guess you could say it maybe sounds a little bit juvenile, but it's an efficiency thing. It's to be able to say, to not have to say livestock feed and pet food, or feed and pet food. Just so we say animal food. FDA says animal food, so that's where that comes from. Animal food manufacturing industry, big part of U.S. agriculture and the economy. 283 million tons, I believe, in 2019. And that would be account, of course, for billions of dollars and lots and lots of people employed. And you can see here about 5,800 feed mills scattered out across the U.S. If you're interested, I guess, in geography, where you may live someday if you pursue these types of careers, you know, the closer those dots are together, there are more feed mills in that area. There are more livestock in general in those areas, and probably more jobs in those areas in this field, to be honest. So if you want a visual, there's a pretty good one. Pet food, a little bit different. Much more specialized, a greater barrier to entry in, you know, specialty knowledge, and probably equipment and manufacturing equipment costs and that types of things. And there you can see a little more of the pet food manufacturing closer to our U.S. population centers. Northeast California has a smattering. Texas has some huge cities. The Southeast as well. You get into the West, less population, less pets, you know, fewer pets, less pet food manufacturing. Kind of makes sense. So you roll it all together, 6,200 manufacturing facilities. 236 million was from back in 2016. We've updated those data a bit. So 236 million tons of livestock and poultry feed, about 10 million tons of pet food. And we can see our top consumers. This, again, might play in variety and diversity, and then, I guess, in prevalence. I know Dr. Bradley works on the swine side predominantly. Lots of opportunities, swine and broilers. Beef cattle, maybe not so much call for pure beef cattle nutritionists, because so much is done on pasture. So this could be a bit misleading graphic, but you can see those top classes of livestock there. And then as you get on down, there are opportunities in aquaculture, equine, sheep and goats is growing as our population changes as well. Might be interesting here too to look at the top 5 states, mostly in the Midwest, and then Texas and North Carolina, because of the swine population in North Carolina, I would think. And then ingredient wise, if you study poultry or swine nutrition, or kind of keep up with that, this is what we would certainly guess. And corn and soybean meal and dried distillers grains are very dominant in that ingredient world. Looking a bit more at the ingredients, corn is produced for its intended purpose, you know, to feed livestock and feed humans. Almost everything else on here, with the exception of whole grains, is a co-product that was meant to be created, or a byproduct, something that was just kind of off-all from some other industry. So in our world of sustainability and the talk of environmental footprint and environmental impact and that kind of thing, to be involved in agriculture, to be involved in animal agriculture, you can hold your chin up and be proud that you're in an industry that very much upcycles, takes something of lesser value. Maybe it can't be used directly by humans. We feed it to livestock and we come up with, animal sourced foods that are of high quality, and we kept ingredients and material out of the landfill. So increasingly, as this conversation, gets more and more prevalent in our society, it's something that you can continue to be proud of, that we are such recyclers and upcyclers, and you can see those ingredients there that come from different industries. And if you began to look at all the different ingredients from the different industries, it's mind-blowing almost how many things can be used to nourish livestock. Dr.
Hey,
Bradley,
Paul, I have a question real quick for you. Why do you think it's so hard to get this point across to the general public? What are we doing wrong? I mean, not only are we upcyclers, but they attack the cattle, and the cattle graze lands that we can't grow other crops on for humans. I mean, what are we missing to educate the general public that every piece of soil is not suitable to grow vegetables?
It's a wonderful question, and certainly not a simple answer, Dr. Bradley. But I think one thing perhaps, because I'm going to say most of us on this call today, we are fluent in science and we are fluent in production, and we can, you and I can talk to each other all day about production things. Mm-hmm. And I think perhaps we take things for granted, and I hate to speak in generalizations, but I think as a whole, we take some things for granted. We want to jump into the cold hard facts really quick. No, we're not bad. Look at us. We're using 42% co-products, as an industry. And maybe we haven't backed up and thought about whom we're talking with. We haven't tried to make that emotional connection to say, hey, I know you care about this. We do too. Let me explain what a co-product is. Let me explain what would have happened if animal agriculture wasn't able to use these. You start talking about tons that go into landfills and that are wasted and things like that. I'm not even qualified to answer your question, to be honest with you. I don't think I'm great at advocacy either. I want to be and I try to be, but I don't think I am great at it. But I think probably foregoing initial emotional connection to let others know that aren't in agriculture know that you care. You may have heard, Doc, the phrase, I don't care how much you know until I know that you care, or how much you care. I think that probably plays here. Again, in general, I'm not trying to say that nobody's good at advocacy, because certainly there are some great people out there that speak up for our industry. But I don't think it is as well received as we would want it to be.
Do you think for the future scientists, we need to be more emotionally intelligent than just fact-based?
Yes, I am willing to say that. I think I'm speaking largely to a younger crowd that are coming up, and I would encourage you to do that, to be self-aware, not self-critical or anything like that, but to be self-aware, to know who you are, what you're good at, what your strong suits are. And I've heard the phrase, and I love it. Awareness empowers me. When I know about something, I can do something about it. So if your tendency is to jump right into the cold hard facts and the science and not consider, what the other person may or may not know, what their experiences may or may not have been, once you become aware of that, you can do something about it. Slow everything down, go back as far as you need to go to make that emotional attachment, that emotional connection, then start with the with more of the facts and the data. There are leaps and bounds that we can make as an industry. And Casey, quite honestly, there are careers in agricultural advocacy. There are folks that earn their living doing this type of thing. I think it's beautiful and wonderful. It's a way to take a passion and turn it into a career. That's really, fantastic. Good enough answer without giving you an answer? I don't know.
I'm trying to have the students think a little bit more, and so they can come up with some good questions too here. So,
sure,
we have some pretty passionate people on our call today.
Fantastic. But I'm trying to share some of this as a very high level overview, just to show, how big the world of feed and nutrition really is. And if you pursue these types of careers, formal education doesn't prepare you for all of it. I remember so many times, trying to laugh things off and be a little humorous to say, oh, I must have been absent that day. And there are things that you just can't fathom, how many ingredients. I remember coming to Tennessee Farmers Co-op as a relative newbie and talking about using 100,000 tons of wheat midds and thinking, I just can't envision how big a 100,000 ton pile of anything would be. So it's a beautiful, huge, wonderful field to be in. It really is. We touched on this just a bit, sustainability, and here are some of the cold hard facts that you can talk about and be proud of. You saw that whole universe. These were 2016 data, 236 million tons of finished feed, about 110 million tons. 110 million tons would be co-products or byproducts that are upcycled and kept out of landfills. So something to be proud of, and good cocktail party talk as well. 9.6 billion with a B. Most of those are chickens, but a huge number. 9.6 billion animals, 144 million pets. Our industry is strong and growing. Now, for those of you who like economics and sales, 297 billion in sales, $22 billion in taxes. When you go talk to legislators, I guess I could say, these are the numbers that you have in your pocket with you, because billions in tax dollars, that gets people's attention. That gives you that strong voice. It's not all about money, and some of it's about understanding, obviously, and doing the right things by your constituents. But in general, when you arm yourself with commerce and tax numbers like these, you can get an audience and get people's attention. And we broke this down by state as well. And you can see there again, if you were advocating, on a Capitol Hill or a state legislature, you'd begin to say, "Hey, Senator, hey, Congresswoman, whatever. We have 62,000 jobs in Pennsylvania. This is really important." And that's the way you would begin to engage. So 47 of our states manufacture feed. The other is Wyoming. There's Hawaii and maybe Rhode Island and Delaware, perhaps. I don't think Wyoming now has any licensed facilities, as odd as that sounds. Again, labor is nice to talk about, leaning on 1 million jobs in our industry and $56 billion in wages. Also with iFeeder, we look at pet food and the contributions just of the pet food industry, and you can see some of those numbers fall out as we move from raw materials to value add, manufactured, and then when we get all the way to retail, take about $4 billion worth of raw materials and turn it into $30 billion worth of pet food. And then pet food ingredients, you can see more of those meat and poultry byproducts are used, rendered products are used there, things from fishery ingredients. And then there's a whole gamut of broth and flavor-based ingredients that come on to pet food at a certain point in the manufacturing process. That is a little niche or a little part of our industry as well. Probably if your interest and your training is in food science and food technology, you've probably got a lot to contribute right there. Doc, did you have another comment?
Well, I was going to say, I think you pointed out something very important here. 4 billion to 30 billion. There's a lot more money to be made on the pet food side than the livestock. So there's a lot more, I guess, companies out there. Wouldn't you think, on the feeds? I mean, for jobs and things like that.
Sure, you would be specializing yourself a bit more to go into pet food manufacturing. But as Dr. Bradley points out, when you take 4 billion in raw materials and you go to 30 billion at retail, there's a lot of room there. There's a lot of money to be made. There's also a whole lot of room for creativity, graphic design for packaging, marketing. So, maybe those that are really passionate about people, pets, and to connect with people, to make people happy and satisfied. If that is your tendency, yet you still like agriculture, you like feed, you like animals, this might be a place to pursue, because on the pet side, it's so diverse. There's focus groups, there are all manners of research groups that aren't the hardcore animal research that we might think of initially. It's, there are people in this world that get paid to play with puppies all day and document their behavior in some manner, or analyze video footage of what our animals are doing, under this stimuli or that stimuli. So yeah, that's great, Casey, to bring that up, because it just shines again the light on the diversity and all the different possibilities out there. And I'm as guilty as anybody. I had this vision of what feed manufacturing was in my head because of a lack of exposure. Feed making to me was grinding corn and with a supplement tank on your grinder and a tractor, and that was my world. That's what I knew about feed manufacturing until I came to the industry. And rather than that world getting smaller, it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger as I've gotten older, met more people, been more places, and done more things. To all of you, nothing today do I want to say to sound braggadocious or anything like that. I am thankful for what I've been able to do, but I've been places and I've done things that I could never have imagined as a farm kid, or as an undergrad studying animal science, or going to graduate school. Even just the places that it's taken me, like Dr. Seuss's book, "Oh, the Places You'll Go," I just couldn't fathom it. I just couldn't fathom it. And if my children or nieces and nephews or friends said, I want to pursue a degree in animal science and work in that industry, I wouldn't discourage them. I know some people in some fields that might, but I can say with a straight face and pure honesty, I would not discourage that. And again, I'm not saying that to brag at all. I just hope it adds to the discussion. So moving on to the pet food ingredients, and again, look at this, not of what the ingredients are, but the potential opportunities. We have a rendering industry out there that takes animal offal, animal byproducts, and some they're rendered through various processes, cooked, made safe, and made useful for generally pet food, but some is used in animal feeds as well. What if fish in the ocean and aquaculture is of interest to you? Does that mean you can't be involved in the feed industry? Absolutely not. There's a whole fisheries industry as well, feeding captive fish, or doing something with some of the harvested products from wild caught fish. So it's just a massive industry. If you look down at the bottom there, minerals, vitamins, some of these additives, that would be something more on the pure benchtop chemistry a lot of times. And there are people that enjoy that. They're very well suited to that. But maybe that underlying interest is in agriculture. There's the junction. There's the place where they come together. So don't worry about what the ingredients are. Just know that it's very diverse and there's a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things and probably live in a lot of different places. Pet foods, looking at those ingredients again, different than livestock feed. More on the meat side, feeding carnivores as we would expect. And then again, back to the numbers, you can see the valuation of those different animal derived ingredients used in pet food. Pointed this out: population centers, lots of pets, lots of pet food. California, Texas, Florida, not surprising. Economic benefit from pet food, though, we're back to where some of those ingredients are sourced. And again, that's generally back toward where the grain and the livestock are produced. What if you are a aspiring global traveler? What if you enjoy the global economy? Lots to be done on importing and exporting. Do you speak more than one language? Do you have an interest in speaking more than one language? I would say you would be in demand to be bilingual or trilingual and have some fluency in feed and ingredients and in livestock. You would be a very valuable commodity in today's economy. And you can see some of those again, in the billions of dollars in commerce. So looking forward, things look good, right? I mean, our global population of people are growing. Economies are, they're improving. Folks have more discretionary monies to spend on the good stuff, if you will. And there's more interest in a better, more well-balanced diet on the human side, getting away from some of the nutritional deficiencies and diseases that have been prevalent in prior years. So these proteins have to come from somewhere. And I know there's the noise out there about fake meat and, laboratory grown meat and so on and so forth. Even so, those ingredients, that stuff can't come from thin air, even if it isn't conventionally produced from livestock. Crops and ingredients are still going to be part of that. So, no matter how you slice it, I think there's growth and potential is a lot of potential. The niches, the specializations to get into the sustainability realm, environmental impact realm, animal welfare and animal well-being, that's not going away either. So the future is bright for animal agriculture. Getting toward the end here, I don't think I have too many more slides. So yes, the growth potential is there, but it can be affected by a whole lot of things. Disease threats. Some of you may have heard of African swine fever that's plaguing the swine industry in other parts of the world. That has impacted not only the world pork markets, but abilities to import and export for some people. Trade policies. When you start looking at, for some livestock sectors, up to 28% of our production is exported. Trade policies can have a big impact on price. If for some reason we couldn't export, we've all of a sudden got a 28% excess here in this country. That's probably going to drive prices down. What about ingredient approvals? Well, you know, let's say the industry finds something that they would like to use. Is that a fast process, a slow process, an easy process? Very much not easy, generally costly, and generally slow. And that also costs our industry in the millions of dollars when these good ingredients that would be suitable and safe and healthy and nutritious and beneficial, they sit in these regulatory pipelines. It's very, very costly to our industry. And then consumer transparency. We talked a little bit about that, interfacing with the customer. And if I may give just some life wisdom to you, the customer, or whom has the customer, is almost always the most important in that chain of commerce. They're the ones that make the decisions and pay the bills. We can be the greatest at producing USDA grain-fed beef, but if nobody wants it, it's not a very good field to be in, right? So that consumer interface, transparency, sharing information, consumer advocacy, whatever you want to call it, I think will continue to grow. I don't have a crystal ball, not, you know, just like everybody else, but I believe that will be a growing area. And then we put out educational resources as well. If you are still an undergraduate and you're taking a feeds and feeding course or a feed manufacturing course, we have an online resource called the Feed Manufacturing Technology. You can find that on AFIA's webpage, and we have some special concessions made for student subscriptions if you're interested in that. And then there's a bit about all the breadth of topics covered. I think there are 11 sections and 80 chapters, so it's a very comprehensive thing. There's the regular cost, and like I say, there are some concessions made for students. So Dr. Bradley, we've talked for about 35 minutes here. I think we have about 25 left. I'm happy to take the discussion anywhere the group would like, answer questions, or at least try to. And if I can't, I'm going to be really honest with you and say I just shouldn't try.
All right. Well, if my students don't start volunteering, I'm going to volunteer them. So let's kind of start it off. I think I've always really enjoyed AFIA they do a lot more than just lobby. They educate, but some of the best things I think I found through AFIA and CRF in the past was the networking. How do students coming out or young professionals get involved in some of these committees through AFIA, CRF, some of those other Tennessee ones that you've been involved with?
Sure.
Help grow networks.
Sure. And that was something I found super valuable as well. I think it's human nature, regardless of what industry that we're in, there are those people that are kind of the titans of that industry that are looked up to, deservedly so. You know, if you were a young football player, you'd probably be gaga over Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and that kind of crowd. You know, those are the stars. They're the titans of the industry. Well, animal nutrition and feed, they have those types of folks as well. So I would encourage you to do what you can do when you're young in your career to get where those folks are. If that's an animal science annual meeting or a dairy science annual meeting or a committee through AFIA or some other organization, get there, get in the same room with them, listen to a discussion that they're having. You'll find those folks very, very willing to share knowledge. I mean, look at what you all have in Dr. Bradley. She's willing to share, goes out of her way to share. And I think you'll find our industry to be very accommodating and not trying to give an infomercial for AFIA, but it's just the way it happened in my career is, well, you'll know the people by name, Casey, but our department head at the time said, Paul, I want you to work on AFIA, and Todd Steen, I want you to work on CRF. So I got on every committee and member interest group that was appropriate. And I found myself, you know, in the room with, you know, Connie at ZenPro and Chad Risley and some of the folks that I looked up to. And I tried to do a lot more listening than I did talking, but you learn and you form relationships. And then it gets to the point you can send an email and say, hey, I'm having this issue, or I'm thinking about this. And those folks will help you. You know, I don't know that they'll drop everything they're doing at the moment to help you, but they'll help you, myself included. You know, I'm happy to help almost everybody. I think that's, as an association, that's at the heart of what we do. But you know, I don't mind at all to help folks, no matter the, you know, whether it's livestock question, industry question, whatever. That's I'm certainly open to that stuff as well. But just get where those folks are, get in the same room, in the same forum with them. Be yourself, be respectful, and those relationships will come, and some of them will sustain you for an entire career. So, you know, somebody close to your age, an event, and you may spend the next 20 years bouncing ideas off each other, and I think that's beautiful and valuable.
No, I agree. Jack Garrett, you have your hand up. I'm assuming you have a question.
Yeah, Paul, has AFIA gotten any action or movement on what's happening here? This initiative that's started in Colorado on animal cruelty?
Jack, I don't know. It's a good question, and AFIA does concern itself with those types of bills in state laws, but I don't have an appointment on the state affairs side, so I honestly can't. I can say we are engaged, but I can't tell you if any progress has been made.
Yeah, it's really a crazy initiative, and it's, you know, it kind of, and again, this gets back to what you were talking about with you know, trying to get engaged with the public, and you know, not try to use the science all the time, but use I guess emotions and experiences and all of that along with it. This is just some crazy stuff that's happening here. They're positioning it as animal cruelty, but you know, it's going to the point of, well, animals can't actually be marketed until they're like 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
And reproduction on livestock has to be all natural reproduction. AI and embryo transfers is now would be gone with it. And then the other impact that a lot of people don't realize is it's going to impact companion animals. From the aspect of spay and neutering dogs and cats will not be legal in Colorado if this initiative passes.
Mm-hmm. Jack, just to comment on that, you know, maybe there are two of those human or general public or pop culture things going on here, and one is pretty obvious with the, you know, animal welfare and that type of sentiment. That one's pretty obvious. Another thing I see kind of on the rise is I hear people talking, and these are the people that can talk and connect, and you know, they have the ability to prosper, to make money off these types of discussions. There's this rise that I see in not heritage beef, but vintage beef. And the narrative behind it is these animals are older and they've lived and they've experienced life and they have been happy and they've been sad and they've given birth. And the characteristics of that will come through in the meat and the eating experience. I'm not at all telling you that's the sentiment that fueled these proposed regulations. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I think that something like that may help fuel, you know, a proposed legislation like that. So it gets into, you know, we're talking about careers, but, and we've talked, Casey, a little bit about awareness of the entire world and of yourself. but knowing that that's going on, that's back there in the weeds, and it may have some effect on some very devastating legislation. You know, that knowledge is that gives an opportunity to engage and to help somehow. And Jack, I didn't have a good answer for your question, other than to say we know that that's going on. It could be super detrimental to, well, more detrimental to the animals than it's meant to be. I mean, maybe let's assume it's well intended, but we know that it it won't turn out that way most likely.
Right. And other thing I wanted to mention was I through my history of working, and yes, now I am retired, but not completely away from the livestock industry. For 25 to 30 years, I was involved with AFIA and NFIA and all of these organizations, and they've been value, like Paula said, to network and to meet people and to really be an influencer. The Nutrition Council, which is to me kind of right now is a shadow of what it used to be, or a shell of what it used to be. When I was involved in it in the late 1990s and early 2000s, we had direct contact with the FDA, and we had discussions with the FDA about issues and about subjects and all of that. And you know, it helps to keep the industry moving forward and keep everyone well connected with it. So I have long supported AFIA and wish it the best, and hope that more of these students can get involved with it. That's, you know, whatever job you get into, find out how involved your company is in AFIA. If they're not a member, work towards trying to get them to become a member, because it's going to be very valuable, and in the long run will pay off multiple times more than what it costs to actually be part of it.
Well, thank you. And to our audience, Jack Garrett was one of those titans that I mentioned earlier on that I tried to get in the same room with whenever I could. And it was through the AFIA Nutrition Committee, which used to be council. And
Yep.
yes, it used to have more strict, membership guidance and requirements, but that's since changed. But Jack, I remember you well, probably back in 06, 07, something like that. So,
Yep.
thank you for the comments, and thank you for your contributions.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna call out Caitlin Zemer now. She is with Lynch Livestock, and I would imagine she's had to have a quick learning curve in the feed world. Caitlin, do you have any questions?
I don't think so. I didn't get on until halfway through, so didn't catch most of the presentation, but it's definitely a learning curve when you go from grad school to teaching for a year and then stepping into a role with not very much guidance, especially on the federal side of things. So don't really have any, I guess, like, I don't think we're involved with AFIA. So if there's a way that, you know, as a young professional to get involved, that'd be great.
And we see the feed truck driving by in the background.
Yeah, my office is right by the scale, so.
Any other questions, thoughts? I saw Bernard peek in with his camera.
Casey, just curious, how many folks are on?
I think we have over 20 that have come in and out. I do have a question, because I think this brings it up as we talk about advocacy, lobbying. What are your thoughts on some of these students that really are heavy master's, PhD into the science about getting exposed to Capitol Hill? Because I think that was, in my career, one of the best things I ever did, a little bit, and I wish I would have maybe done different internships. But what are some of those opportunities for some of these students to get onto Capitol Hill, and how do they do that? Because it exposes a whole new world.
Sure. I think there are a couple of ways that would be the most predominant. Two senators and multiple House members from each state. They say all politics are local. All those folks have a relatively massive budget for staffing and for programs. Almost all of them do have some legislative interns and internships, maybe more geared toward political science and history, pre-law undergraduate majors, to be brutally honest. But those in heavy agriculture states are going to have an interest in you if you have an interest in, politics and policy making and an agriculture background. They'll be interested in talking with you. And if you have, you have an in, you can go to some event when they're back at their home state, or where that's being hosted, or the farm where that's being hosted. That's going to help you. But by and large, those folks don't have an agriculture production background. So you will be of value and service to them if that's what you choose to pursue. That would be one way. That's probably the most direct and, duh, Paul, we can figure that out kind of way. But otherwise, your commodity group, trade associations, NCBA, state beef associations, NPPC, Pork Board, all the commodity representation have legislative fly-ins, or we're speaking pre-COVID here, grant me that, but historically and traditionally, legislative fly-ins where the contingencies go to Capitol Hill and meet with generally staffers, sometimes the members of Congress themselves, and advocate for the most burning issues in affecting their industry. If you could be part of one of those contingencies, that would be a I guess less committal, Casey, way to get some exposure to to go there, to break the threshold and be in the Hart Senate building. It's not a myth anymore, or something that's intimidating. You've been there, you've seen it. So many things you might have seen on the nightly news. Oh yeah, and you'll see people, you'll see senators walk by. Oh, well, I know who that was. And it gets into it's familiar. It's not completely foreign to you. Be part of a meeting where that staff person sits down and goes over things with you, and you'll find those folks very down to earth, very down to earth. They're not any different than we are, but what they know that we perhaps don't know is process, legislative process, and that is a big field in and of itself. And again, focusing on careers. If you have that interest as well, you have some interest in policy and political science and production background, or at least knowledge of production, you can explain, probably at a very low grade level, what really goes on in the world of production. You will be of value in that policy making process as an advisor, as a area or a sector specialist or whatever. You'll be valuable to some folks on Capitol Hill if that's something that you're interested in. But those would be probably the two most predominant ways to get there. Some of your bigger companies, Elanco comes to mind, they may have more of a legislative intern that would go with some of their lobbying staff for a summer or for a year and be exposed that way. But those would be more rare opportunities, I would think.
Thank you. I'm going to pick on Ty Davis. He's a ruminant nutritionist studying at Western Illinois. Ty, do you have any questions for Paul on his background as a ruminant nutritionist? If he can hear us, sometimes he has issues with audio. Who else is a ruminant person on here? Claire, Amid, Christine?
I guess as Casey's going through kind of a roll call there, I would, from personal advice perspective, don't pigeonhole yourself just because you're a swine person or a poultry person or a ruminant nutritionist. If you're in school, go see what your monogastric counterparts are doing, or vice versa. If you get out in the job world and you were hired to be a dairy nutritionist or a beef nutritionist, if the opportunity comes along to balance some rations or to work on the monogastric side, try it. Get in there and figure it out. Read, study, ask other people, see what you can do. Be multifaceted. Don't pigeonhole yourself early on. I worked for ADM Mormons for a brief stint, and some of their species specialists, their specialized nutritionists, they didn't have formal training in that species. They just got in there, seized opportunity, and made it work. So you'll increase your marketability by doing that, and probably going to be fun too, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So
Well, it's Casey, that's very, very true. Again, from my experience over 30 years, when I first went to Diamond V Mills, I went as a beef nutritionist to do research. And within the first couple of years, I was doing swine, poultry, pet food, dairy, and all of that, because the product lines that I was dealing with go across species. And you'll find that happening more with a lot of industries, with ingredient industries, than coming in and being a specific species expert. The last couple of years at Qualitech, everything was poultry. I was working on trace minerals and poultry nutrition, and dealing with the large integrators with Tyson and Pilgrims and Purdue. And so you evolve, you do what you want to get that degree. But again, kind of once you get out, it's everything and anything that you can do.
Paul, quick question. Am I allowed to share your contact information with the students?
Sure, that doesn't bother me at all.
All right. Claire asked, what are some examples of job opportunities within the AFIA or animal sci PhDs for people with PhDs in animal science?
Okay, I'll start to answer that question by giving something that was often told to me. If you have a master's or a PhD, you also still have a bachelor degree, and you also still have a high school degree. So you don't have to pigeonhole yourself that you only have to have an advanced degree. That may be the tier of jobs that you want, and you may be overqualified for some others, but stay down to earth regardless of your education level. Be proud of it internally, but I guess stay somewhat humble as you start out looking for a position. At least, when you get a little experience under your belt, it changes the ball game as well. First part of your question, within AFIA, we have a legislative and regulatory team, and we have a meetings, communication, and events team. So depending on what your formal education is in, ag communications, there are opportunities, graphic design even, and I know that's probably not this crowd, but even for AFIA, as small a staff as we are, if we had a graphic designer that also knew production agriculture, boom, to the top of the list for that position. So on the legislative and regulatory side, again, some knowledge of feed, the ingredient industry, and or nutrition is probably going to make you the best fit for that team. When you look at the industry as a whole, I won't say it's limitless, but when you think about the processes that have to go on to get, feed made and delivered to animals, from raw ingredients and everything in between, there are tons and tons of opportunities. we could probably spend a half a day and not list all of the positions that are out there. So I'm not trying to cop out on the answer, but there are
No,
no
it's
specifics.
limitless. Yeah. And Noel also asked a good question. I was going to ask this one. What are some good legitimate resources for finding information on the issues those in agriculture, for instance, are concerned with, and get the correct facts versus hearsay or rumors to counteract some of these, to have, be intelligent
Sure.
in conversations at cocktail parties?
Sure. Going back to those commodity groups, NCBA, NPPC, Pork Board, U.S. Poultry, AFIA, Animal Ag Alliance, U.S. Farmers and Ranchers, Field to Market. There are a lot of really good agriculture trade associations out there. And I can assure you they spend lots and lots of money and lots of staff time to compile those facts, those little snippets and facts and figures that do matter, that help tell the story. And I can promise they would love for more people to go, social media. A lot of that stuff is posted there. It's on websites. It's meant to be easy to find, and hopefully it is. But that's where I would go to arm myself with those types of facts and figures. They're interesting, they're impressive, and they do as much for us as ag to be able, like I said, to hold your chin up and puff your chest out and say, we are good. Look at what we are part of. Look at what we do. Then also to give you the confidence at that cocktail party or your nieces or nephews' baseball game or whatever, that when you engage with someone that doesn't have our background, you're confident. You don't just have to say, oh, we're good because we say we're good. Hey, we're a great green industry, a sustainable industry. And here's a couple of things that I can share with you. That's what hits me, Casey, as the sources for that type of thing. And I assure you those trade associations will really, really be happy for those things to be used and be shared.
No, great. Thank you, Dr. Davis. I'm going to real quick share your email address on the chat. So if everybody wanted to get that, that's pdavis@afia.org. If you wanted to email him directly, check out their website. Like you said, with that student discount, that's a good resource in my mind right now of what you guys publish and get the information out to the industry. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions for Dr. Davis, please email him. That's kind of what they're there for a little bit. And like you said, I think some good points. Be humble, listen, get in the room with the right people, and don't have a box or a narrow focus on career opportunities.
That's right.
So thank you. Everybody have a great weekend.